Where's the EQ on the reverb? Delay time? Delay. Turn up the feedback. Wait. Pan the condenser to the left and the dynamic to the right. Lower the threshold. Raise the output. Wait. Set the frequency range. High pass. Welcome to the Lady Audio Radio Show. Hey everybody, how are you today? My name is Clara and I'm the host of the Lady Audio podcast. Thank you for listening. To subscribe, please visit ladyaudio.com, and from there you'll find the links to YouTube, iTunes, and Podbean, and you'll also find the links to give the Lady Audio Facebook page a like and to follow me directly on Twitter. There's also a resource page where I've listed a few of the places that I find very resourceful. I only have one plug today, and that is for my new podcast / videocast show, and it's called Wyrd Stories. Wyrd is spelled W-Y-R-D, and it's a show about the paranormal and includes stories about ghosts, crypto creatures, UFOs, miracles, and stuff like that. If you have a weird story to share, please send me an email. My email address is clara@ladyaudio.com. Thank you. I lied. I have one more announcement to make, and it's in regards to today's guest, Michael Ferentino. Please be sure to subscribe to MF Television on YouTube. Mr. Ferentino hosts a monthly video cast that is strange with extra super strange webs tangled within. I've included the link to his show in the show notes for this show, and I just wanted you to be sure to subscribe to him and to enjoy his show. I'm sure you will like it. And now on to the interview. Thanks. Bye. Our guest this week is Michael Ferentino of Bedtime for Robots, Love in Reverse, the Miles Hunt Club, and if you really, really dig deeply, you'll find Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. In addition to being an incredible guitar player, Michael also has an interest in vintage horror, sci-fi, and neuroscience. Did I just say neuroscience? Yes, I just said neuroscience. And Michael, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I know that I'm supposed to have my first question be something along the lines of how you got started with recording, but I also have a really strong love for vintage horror and sci-fi, especially the stuff from the 70s and the 80s. That's my favorite. So I'm going to save those questions about how you got started with recording for a little bit later. And my first question for you today, right now, is how did you develop an interest for horror?
Actually, I blame that on my parents. My parents are both big horror fans. They started off with all the really vintage stuff, like the monster movies of the 50s. They used to go to drive-ins together when they were dating back in the day. They're like the quintessential, 50s couple that are still together in their 70s, 50 years later. And when we were growing up, my sister and I, they used to take us to the drive-ins for films like The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby and all these great, vintage films. So initially, I was pretty much exposed to that from, a very young age. And then, as I got to be into my early pre-teens and teens, my dad and I used to go to the theater together and watch movies like The Shining. I saw with him when that was a brand new film, Evil Dead, all these great films that are now obviously classics. I feel really lucky that I got to see them with my dad as a kid,
So
that was really my beginning.
How old were you when you saw Evil Dead?
That came out in 1980. I was born in '68. That would make me about 12.
Oh my
In
gosh.
fact, yeah, I think it came out in the theaters in 1980 is what I'm thinking. 79, 80,
How did you
somewhere
even
around there.
get
So
into
11
the
or
movie
12.
theater? Because they didn't let kids under 18 into certain movies at that time.
If you had your parents with you, as long as it wasn't related, as long as it wasn't rated R, I think it had to be rated PG, and then it was parental guidance suggested. They had all these like little things, and you're not allowed in without your parent. You know, it
Okay.
changed over the years once it became NC-17 and all that stuff, and then it was like you can't get in at all.
Oh,
But back
okay.
in my day, we got away with a lot of stuff, you know.
Yeah, I'd
Actually,
say.
you could take a nip of alcohol with your dad once in a while, as long as you know you were around with your parents and they were making sure you weren't getting into trouble. It was a different world back then.
Yeah, I remember when I went to New York for the first time. Well, actually, it was the second time I went to New York. It was down in Soho. I went into a bar, and I had just barely turned 18. And I walked up, and I know I did not look, I looked like I was 14. I was very young looking for my age. I went up to the bar, and they said, "What can I get for you?" I was like, "I'll have a beer." And I ordered a Guinness, and I was just sitting there drinking it like, wait. like, so it was a different world back then.
It absolutely was. Just
Yeah.
yeah. I feel bad for a lot of the kids growing up now. You
Yeah.
know, everything is just policed, and you know, you just have to.
Yeah.
It's like you're constantly under surveillance. It's pretty sad, but it is what it is, and we accept what we got.
Let's see. So I think that your love for horror really shows in one of the Bedtime for Robots video that is called Home Sweet Home. The visuals are not bloody or anything, but the music, it really makes you feel like something bad is about to happen. And it's actually really suspenseful. So I think that, because I kept waiting, I'm like, okay, he's going through the house. Okay. And then I saw someone pregnant, and I was like, okay, something's going to happen to her. But nothing ever happened.
That's interesting. You chose that one out of all my stuff. That film, honestly, was really just a tour of our quirky little 1800s farmhouse that we rented for a while. My ex-wife and I, my baby mama.
Uh-huh.
She's actually she lives in Kansas now. In fact, my daughter's with me for the summer. But we had a baby together, and she's now 6 years old. And
Oh, cool.
at that time, all I wanted to do was capture, you know, that moment, her being pregnant, kind of take a little tour around the house because we had a lot of pretty cool and quirky artwork, mostly made by my daughter's
Yeah.
mom.
Yeah.
And that's really all that video was. There was no point to it other than that. But you're right. The music, and this is one thing I say about music in general, is that it's probably the most important part of film. Yes, you have to have a good story, but not always. If you have no story at all, if you have the right suspenseful music, the right interesting music, you can have a bunch of random visuals, and you can give somebody a certain feeling. And I
Yeah.
think that's what, you know, the whole video and visual art, you know, thing kind of emerged from, is probably from film in the beginning, you know, some of the silent films back in the day.
There were a couple of articles written not too long ago, and I can't find them any longer, but this one video that I came across gave really great example and went into depth about the importance of audio along with video. And did straight up comparisons with high quality audio, bad visual, and then also high quality video, bad audio. And the difference was just like night and day. It's like you can have the best quality video that's out there, and if your audio isn't up to par, it's pretty much shit. Like it just doesn't. And I'll have to bleep that out because I just said the S word. But It's it's so important. I really think it gets overlooked. Of course, advertising agencies know this, and so that's why all the commercials and things like that are always really loud and clear, and the audio is really, really important. And I think that that knowledge hasn't really hit the internet yet, with all these YouTube creators and stuff. I don't think they really realize how important the audio is.
No, I absolutely agree with you. Not only the audio quality, but the choice of audio. You could take like the most incredible scene in a film. If you put the wrong music into it, it completely changes the film. For instance, there was a film called Legend. I don't know if you've heard of this film. It's kind of like a fairy tale kind of thing. It came out in the early '80s with Tom Cruise of all people.
I think I've seen
And
it about 200 times.
okay, so there's a version of that film with the music of Tangerine Dream,
Right.
and it's very effective and it's very vibey. But there's also a version of it where they changed the music for whatever reason. I don't know if they had like rights issues or what, and it just does not feel the same. It just feels like a commercial film, and it just killed the whole vibe of it. That's one, and then there's a horror film, kind of semi-cheesy, but I kind of like it. This film called Happy Birthday to Me from like 81, 82. It had the chick from Little House on the Prairie in it. But it's a pretty creepy film when it had the original music soundtrack. Then they pulled that and they changed it, and it does not feel the same anymore. It's just, And in fact, I really want that film, but the only version I can find is with this crappy music soundtrack, and now I have no interest in seeing it anymore.
Right. Yeah,
So yeah, I think that's a really big part.
Yeah, definitely. I have a CD of the UK release of Legend, and it has a completely different, music to it. I wonder if it might be yet another version that goes along with that movie.
My guess is the UK is probably the good one. Usually they just have better taste in general over there than we do as American, sellers of art.
Right.
Sellers of product, I should say.
Yeah.
Everything that once a company over here gets a hold of it, they're like, ooh, let's just change it, make it a little bit more like this so it doesn't offend anyone and makes all the people of all types love it.
Right. Right. Well, I don't like that.
You and me both.
So, besides the videos for your music, you've also started a YouTube TV show called Michael Ferentino's After Hours. No, is it just? I think it's just Michael Ferentino After Hours.
Correct.
And
without the apostrophe S.
Okay, Michael Ferentino After Hours. Your first video was just released here in June. And what's the story behind that project?
All right. It started off as what I wanted to do is I've been making all these kind of sort of abstract videos / short films for quite some time now. And I wanted to do some kind of like little film festival using social media as, the way to kind of introduce this stuff to people. And plus I'm involved in all these different little movements. There's one called Wet New, which is WEATNU, stands for We Are the New Underground. I work with another guy that does this whole unexplained sounds scene in Italy, and another guy that does this other scene out of England, and all these little scenes happening, and I kind of wanted to start bringing some of those other artists out that were kind of similar, doing the dark stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to figure out how to do this. I had this film festival concept in my head, almost like a late night grindhouse thing, but it would only be available on social media rather than, trying to sell it to cable television or something like that. And so I brought this idea to a good friend of mine who used to be my manager with my band Love in Reverse. And this is, a husband and wife team, actually. They were behind bands like Metallica and Anthrax, and started this little record label back in the 80s called Megaforce Records, which became this very seminal, heavy metal label. So anyway, I sat with them because I just, always really respect their opinions. They're very, successful people who are also down to earth, as you can imagine, and always have great ideas. So I sat with them one night at their house and over some drinks and said, look, I got this idea, and I showed them some videos, and I'm like, I would love your opinion on this. What do you think about how I can elaborate on it? And before the end of the night, the two of them, myself and my wife, Jennifer Levinsky Ferentino, the four of us all just together came up with, this whole concept for this after hours. Like, weren't you gotta be an MC here, and kind of, well, how about sort of like the Rod Serling of the Twilight Zone era, kind of introducing videos of music, and then I started bringing up some other things, and, and they're like, and we can do some quirky things in between, have a guest artist that comes on and we play a bunch of their stuff, and I was like, ooh, this is great. And then we just elaborated, wrote all these ideas down, and little by little it became this after hours thing. And so every month, it's a monthly show, I have some of the music of Bedtime for Robots on there to kind of start the show off. We're kind of the house band. And then I bring in an artist that, instead of trying to just put random videos from a bunch of artists, which I don't know if we'll do that in the future, maybe we will. But right now I really wanted to focus on sort of like the musical guests like they used to do on Saturday Night Live, and I guess they still do to this day. But and pretty much have 2 or 3 videos of that artist so you can see their diversity and their vision, you know what I mean?
I like when you were introducing the guest, and I call him Almark, but you call him Almark, and I'm not sure which one is right, but when you were introducing his music and his video, the way his starts, you did the edit really quickly, and you cut off your sentence, and then his recording started right away, and it almost felt like War of the Worlds. Like, it was just like all of a sudden we interrupt this, and I think that was a really good edit.
Thank you. Actually, okay, so to elaborate on that just a little bit, his video actually starts.
This is a test. This is a test. This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcasting system. This is a test. This is a test. This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcasting system. Broadcasters of your area, in voluntary cooperation with federal, state, and local authorities, have developed this system to keep you informed in the event of an emergency. If this had been an actual emergency, the attention signal you've just heard would have been followed by official information, news, or instructions. This station serves the Northeast Illinois area. This concludes this test of the emergency broadcast system. This
After
is a
the
test.
very intro of that, it starts off with all of a sudden where there's a crawl going across the bottom, and the music actually starts. So when I saw that, I was like, ooh, this would be really cool as a War of the World sort of thing, because I want quirky things to happen within the show. I want every show to have something unexpected or something interesting in there. And that was a perfect little area. So I started doing some research and started looking up, some of these real, public service messages from back in those days, like 50s, 60s era. where I was trying to find one that was a real, not just not just a what do you call it, a test, but an actual real emergency.
Right.
And came across this. So when I put it together, I played it for Almec, and he loved it. And he was like, "I can't believe you found the original thing that was my that was my inspiration for making this video." And he goes, "And you started with that. It was really cool." So it was one of those kind of kismet moments where we were both really happy that it all came together.
Yeah, that was cool. This is a test.
Well, I'm glad you dug that. Yeah. That was the whole point of that, just to kind of throw everybody off while you're in the middle of. If one of the things with the show that we're really trying to promote is that you should be wearing a pair of headphones while you're watching this. And I also highly advise watching it in HD. YouTube, you're only going to get as good quality as they'll allow me. It's not as good as my originals, but it's pretty good. But if you do it in HD, put on the headphones and sit in front of a decent monitor, it's pretty much an immersive experience, and that's what we're looking for with this, as opposed to just putting it on your iPhone and listening to it through the crap speaker built in.
Right.
You're not going to get quite the effect.
Yeah, I agree. And okay, so I'm going to jump topics here. And I want to ask you about neuroscience. What got you started in that field?
Okay, that's a good question. Actually, when I was touring with Love in Reverse, I used to read a lot during, all times on the tour van or the tour bus, depending on which we had at the time, depending on how poor or how much money the record company was willing to give us at that moment. And staying in hotels, a lot of times where the guys in the band and the crew had to go out and party all the time, I was kind of a little bit more reclusive, and I'd spend a lot of time just hanging out in the hotel room and reading. And I was really interested in psychology to start with, actually. And started reading a lot of these textbooks on psychology and blah, blah, blah. And as I got deeper into it, I started realizing that a lot of this stuff it didn't seem like there was a lot of scientific background to it. And somehow, doing more and more research, I started reading all these papers on some of the studies of the brain and starting to understand, how behavior was affected by, neurochemicals and structure of the brain itself, and became more interested in that side, the science of it. So when I decided finally to go back to school at some point, I had this dream of getting a master's degree in something. I decided to go back to school, but I had literally like 5 or 6 credits or something, and to start with. So I went back to school, started off, as a psych/English major, and then eventually found, oh my God, there's actually a neuroscience, bachelor's degree available, in a place that I could actually, access, through a bunch of student loans and blah, blah, blah. I didn't have to travel to another state, and it just worked out. So I went in, started working on that degree and blah, blah, and eventually went and got a master's as well in science.
Wow.
So, just wanted to, it was just a goal of mine I wanted to do before I died.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And then this is a question I wanted to ask. What are a few of the things that you've learned about how sound affects our emotions or affects our brains?
Well, one thing that I learned is language is a very important part of the brain. And yeah, music, of course, to be honest with you, I never really studied a lot about how music affects the brain. You would think that I would be interested in that, but for some reason it wasn't. I was more interested in language and how learning at a particular time while the brain is still plastic, meaning that we can still manipulate it. Yes, you and I could sit at our age now and learn an entire language if we put a lot of effort into it, without a doubt. However, there is a period of time from a lot of the studies that I read, at least, during the period where I was doing a lot of studying on this. I haven't really followed up on the latest stuff on this, but basically showing that we have a sort of window of opportunity from probably that age, from the time you're born until about 5 to 10 years old, where you are much more likely to be able to understand multiple languages if you're exposed to them at that time. And like I said, again, you can learn this stuff as you get older, but if you do it while the brain is actually developing, it's the best time. And that, to me, was very exciting, that idea. And the reason it was exciting to me is because as a kid, my father got me into doing the whole music thing from the time I was practically born. By the time I was 6 years old, I was taking guitar lessons. He had me doing classical guitar lessons. I then took opera vocal lessons and all this. So I think of music as a language form. And I was kind of thinking about how, wow, that has a lot to do with probably the obsession I've had throughout my life, and just having that exposure at the right time, right place, right time.
Right. So it sounds like you do incorporate some of the things that you've learned about language and about sound and the brain. It sounds like you do incorporate some of those things into your music by creating specific emotions with a particular song, for instance. So now I want to dig into your music a little bit. You have an extensive history of writing and recording your own music. What did you use to record the demo tapes for Love in Reverse?
Actually, that was a Tascam Porta Studio. It's an 8-track cassette-based recording studio, all analog, of course. Way before the whole digital and using Pro Tools and all that stuff became vogue. So I bought this thing. I started off really before that even with a 4-track studio, a Yamaha 4-track cassette-based recording studio around 1988. And prior to Love in Reverse, my collaborator and I, a guy named Andres Carew out of New York City, at the time, we created this studio. We were, in our late teens, early 20s, and built a studio in my parents' basement in the middle of the Pine Barrens. And that basically led to our record deal with Warner Brothers, the stuff that we did on this little 8-track cassette recorder.
Yeah, that's cool. And did you have any issues with the noise floor with that 8-track?
Not at all, actually. In fact, I still listen to some of these recordings, and I'm amazed at the quality of them.
Ah, that's cool.
It's just, I'm actually pretty blown away. Even stuff as far back as the 4-track recorder in 1988. And I'm going to be honest with you, the biggest part of why that is because Andres, my collaborator, he was just born with this essence of understanding sound and doing it well. In fact, he went into becoming a producer for some pretty interesting records during the early 21st century with a couple English bands, the Wonder Stuff out of England. He actually became the producer of the Miles Hunt Club. And although we co-produced the Love and Reverse stuff, I was much more, the song person, and he was much more the sound person. And Warner Brothers at one time actually just allowed us to go hog wild. They gave us enough money to buy an entire recording studio, and said, "Yeah, you produce your next album because obviously you guys know what you're doing."
Oh, that's nice because I think that because sometimes you'll run across these older machines, used for sale on eBay and stuff. And so for anyone out there that is looking to buy some old analog equipment with a low noise floor, then that might be an option for you.
Yeah, I would say the Tascam Porta Studio is a really great option if that's your thing and you're looking to do the analog kind of thing without using reel-to-reel tape, because obviously that stuff You know, you use 1-inch tape, but then you're getting into, you have to buy a lot of equipment to make that happen.
Right.
You have to buy separate soundboards and blah, blah. This is like an all built-in studio, this 8-track thing. And literally, if you have that one piece, you know, and then you just need whatever you need, your mic pre's and your microphones, and you need your effects units. But you don't really need a whole soundboard and all of that other stuff. In fact, at one point, I was recording a bunch of acoustic stuff, and I would just use headphones as my own, you know, source of, you know, monitoring until the recording was done. Then I would take those tapes, play them in the car, you know, afterwards, and then try to tweak it from there, you know, without using a real monitor system.
You have a newer project now called Bedtime for Robots, and I really love that name. I just think of this robot, you know, putting his head down on a pillow or something. And it's mainly an electronic venture, but I can hear hues of like 80s synths weaving in and out throughout your music. How did Bedtime for Robots get started?
Basically, that was another one of those projects that kind of came out of being signed to a major label, really. One of the problems with dealing with a major label at the level that we were at was so much time in between records. I always call it the hurry up and wait thing. So basically, you'd be making a record, then you go and you tour for the record, and there's so much time in between. A lot of it is wasted, in my opinion. And I would just go in with my little 8-track recorder and constantly record in between. And for every album we would release, I would write, you know, a half a dozen records, if not more, and just constantly write and record. So, you know, you would do one big professional record that you put a lot of effort into production-wise. But in the meantime, I would be experimenting with a little bit more low-budget stuff. And, you know, it was one of those of many projects that came out of all that experimentation, where I was focusing more on the instrumental side and the dark side of the music. And, you know, initially I did a record called Meleus Maleficarum that was a kind of, you know, based on all these old witchcraft texts from, you know, all about the witch trials and the Inquisition and all that stuff. And I kind of wanted to create this vibe around that was just all musical. So it started off that way, using guitars, using drum machines, using some synthesizers, and then little by little I got deeper and deeper into the electronics, and it became more and more of an electronic project over the years.
And what do you use to get those synthesizer sounds?
It's a variation of a lot of different things. One, I use an old Moog synthesizer that is one of my favorite pieces of equipment. The Moog Prodigy. It's like made out of wood and plastic, built, I think, somewhere around the very early 80s, if not the late 70s. Cool. I've been trying to do some research to find out exactly when this particular model came out, and I think it's about 82 that it came out. And so I used that, put it through a bunch of old, you know, little guitar pedal effects and things of that sort. And that's one of my favorite toys. Gibson SG, my electric guitar of choice, putting that through a whole shitload of those kind of little, you know, stomp boxes and whatnot, and then manipulating some of that stuff later. That's another one of my favorites. And these days, since I've acquired the iPad and abandoned the analog studio, I do most of my recording on iPad and iPhone, believe it or not. Yeah. And I mostly use apps as my, you know, my recording base. You know, a lot of people are into these different Ableton Live and all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to avoid being tethered to the computer, so I can go and record out in the backyard and record anywhere I want to be. And the quality is just stunning to me. I put this stuff up against some of the stuff we do with Warner Brothers, and it's, I think, comfortable in quality.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
But I definitely do not like to use anything stock, really. So I tend to take stock sounds and just manipulate and play with them a lot. So, and lots of layering. Layering is a big thing for me. Like, to get one snare sound, sometimes I'll literally spend hours just putting together like 6 or 7 different drum sounds together until I find that snare sound I like, or a particular synth sound. It's just a lot of layering like that.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it, because when I listen to your stuff, it, just like when I was listening to some other electronic musicians, the ones that stand out to me are the ones that, I don't know, I just get this feeling, or I guess it's just a feeling, but I don't know, it's like I can sense it or I can hear it, that there's this signature sound, like the person who's doing it is actually stretching the parameters of those default sounds, and it's actually doing something with that, and not just taking the stock sounds and just cut and pasting them together and putting them up on SoundCloud. There's definitely work that goes into it, and I think it I can hear it, and I think a lot of other people can hear it too, because you have a lot of followers, and especially in this underground thing, it's hard to get a bunch of followers. And anyway, it sounds
right.
like,
I think it's incredibly important to do that. I think because one of the criticisms of the music of today by especially some of the older artists of my age group and older, is that, back in the day you had to do this and this and this, and you had to, put a microphone down an elevator shaft, and you had to, and you had to do all these crazy things. That's how we got that keyboard sound. So now all you have to do is press a button and it happens automatically. However, now that we have this new incredible equipment where you can do that, what can we do that no one does with this equipment, or no one has thought to do with this equipment? And I believe that the possibilities are endless. You get 50 different young musicians out there with 50 different iPads and all the millions of different apps that are available, and have them manipulate things in their own way. You're going to have almost an exponential type of variety out there of sounds and possibilities with music. And plus, we have a plethora of all these great genres from the past that people can draw from. Everything going from the early 20th century music, all the way through now, avant-garde music, electronic music, world music, post-punk, post-this, post-that. There's so many things to draw from that it's amazing to me that the pop radio really allows for like 2 genres of music. I'm like, are you kidding me? You got pop music and you got hip hop. And there's some good stuff happening in both of those worlds. I mean, a lot of people will argue with me about that. I think there are some decent things out there. However, they're few and far between, and they're not exciting like things were back when I was growing up in the late 70s, going into the early 80s. It was very exciting. Bands like Devo and the Talking Heads and Blondie and ZZ Top and this one and that one. Everybody was doing something different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
it had everything from the the classic rock, the punk rock, the new wave, the post rock, the goth, and I don't know what happened. It's all out there.
Yeah, it's really weird. I heard something, and I haven't researched it at all yet, but I heard that there is software that the major labels are using these days that you can put a few different takes or musical ideas into basically the box, into the machine, into this software, and it uses algorithms to determine which song section would be more popular. And as a result, we get these songs nowadays that are basically a bunch of hooks, hook after hook after hook. And there aren't any of those dynamics to, an actual song taking you on a journey anymore. It's just hook after hook after hook. And, like I said, I haven't researched it that deeply yet, but I'm sure it's not that hard to find. You just have to dig a little bit, like I did with your old '80s video.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. It's like, deciding which colors you're going to make available for the new Nissan Sentra.
Right.
It's like we've got blue, we've got titanium, we've got red, and we've researched that's the colors people want.
Right.
There's no artistic, influence
Exactly.
in there. I know a lot of, Motorhead guys that would like freak out when they think about this compared to cars that were made back in the late 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
In any way, shape, or form. I'm sure there's, all the way to like tattoo artists. There's probably people that will put in an algorithm. Everybody likes this kind of tattoo, so I'm going to do this, and it's just going to be this thing I pissed out rather than, artistic expression. It's just part of that least common denominator thing that happens, when you start getting a corporate mentality.
Yep. And off your most recent album, which is titled Big Sleep, Little Death, the songs sometimes have a strong industrial vibe to them, but then there are these like weird, strange sounds that will pop out of you. They pop out of the mix, like on National Lobotomy. And I was just wondering if you can talk a bit about that, about, the mixing process for that, to get those sounds to really pop out.
Oh my God, it's just an arduous process. It's one of the most painful things ever. I complain about it on social media once in a while. It's basically, okay, it's time to mix. That means I'm going to go into hell for about 3 months now.
Yeah.
Because, you know what it is? It's the same thing with making a video. Both the recording process, okay, you're writing a piece of music and you're just letting things flow and you're letting these sounds come out. Now you've got all this stuff on tape or on, in digital, digital wasteland, I like to call it. Now I've got all this stuff in digital wasteland, and I've got all these possibilities, and this piece of equipment will allow me to edit this in 800 million different ways. What do I do? What do I keep myself from doing? What do I not allow myself to even think about? And that's the thing, is the possibilities are endless now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like I go in there and I have this gut feeling, and that's what it is. there are certain things I want to pull, like if it's going to be something like this new record where I was focusing more on industrial beats instead of just everything being kind of more abstract like some of the former, older Bedtime for Robots albums.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted all these industrial beats. I wanted this album to be a little bit of a homage to, the post-punk stuff like Susie and the Banshees and bands like that, a little bit of the dance stuff that happened in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
In the New York City, like Limelight Club scene. So there was a little bit of all that. So look, to get back to your question again, going in and actually creating that, of course you want the pulse, you want the kick drums to kick, you want the snare to smash you in the face, you want all of that to happen, but I want certain things to pop out and to be different and to grab you. And you might feel this beat and be like, okay, yeah, this is cool, I can dig this, it's familiar, and then something punches you in the face.
Right.
It's kind of like, what the hell was that?
Exactly. That's what I was talking about, that signature sound.
Psycho,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I try to do, it's like the element of surprise,
Right.
And I think what it is, okay, this is what this piece of music feels like. Let's do something that you wouldn't particularly imagine happening in this type of music.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's same thing like if I was to write an acoustic track, that's got this really pretty kind of sound to it. It's more exciting to me when the lyrics are really subversive or, all of a sudden some crazy horn solo or distorted guitar solo happens in the middle of this pretty acoustic thing. As long as it works. It has to work, of course. You don't want it just to be jarring and annoying.
Yeah.
So, that's why it is arduous, because you go over it and over it until it works, but at the same time, there's something about it that's special, you know what I mean?
Right, right. And there are some collaborators on the album, and I was just wondering if you could talk about them and who they are and why you chose them to collaborate with.
All right, the first one, obviously he's done 2 tracks with me on this record, and he also did another track with me on my last album, Music's an Undisclosed Location. Craig Manga, his name is. He's out of the UK. I met him through this We Are the New Underground network, and he was a kindred spirit right off the bat. There are tons of artists involved in this network, and mostly something that kind of keeps us all kind of related is the fact that we're all electronic musicians, and we're all kind of grassroots electronic musicians. And but the one thing about him is he had this really quirky side to him that was off from what everybody else was doing, and it kind of reminded me of, the approach that I take to music. And we just hit it off right away. I like that he had this bizarre side to him. I actually Skyped with him one night because I was like, I just want to meet you and talk with you and talk music and talk shop. And right off the bat, I could tell that's what it is. It makes sense. He's a little older than me. So we came from the same era to a certain degree. We were excited by the same kind of artists like David Bowie, T-Rex, Susie and the Banshees, all these mostly British artists, really, and German artists. Mm-hmm. Kraftwerk, Tangerine Dream in the early days. And we also liked a lot of the same quirky films, like horror films and David Lynch films and Stanley Kubrick films. So that's kind of where we hit it off. I also think he's a very talented individual, and he loves to do collaborations. I was never really a collaborative type of guy prior to hooking up with him, believe it or not. And he would send these tracks, say, "Hey, you want to just guest on this track?" So he'd send me something, and he'd play a guitar solo or something. Then I would take it and totally manipulate it into a whole other thing. And then I'd send it back to him. He's like, "Holy shit, man. That's like completely different than what I was expecting. This was cool." And little by little, we would do that with each other, send each other something, and the other one would completely mess up what the original, intent of that track was. And I think that was an exciting thing that we kind of came up with. And so we kind of it's an ongoing thing we do.
Yeah.
That's him. And then the other guy, Ken Alondra, has been my friend since we were in grade school. He's from the Bronx. And I had met him through Andre's Crew, my collaborator in Love in Reverse and several other projects. When we were young kids, I remember us hanging out in a tree in this yard, climbing trees together and talking music from the time we were little kids. And he was always this very intellectual, very kind of really, really brilliant poet, and really great with lyrics and concepts and things of that sort. And I always loved his ideas. They were always crazy. But he's sort of a musician, but not. He doesn't really play any instrument full on. He's more of like I don't know, more of an idea man than anything else.
Okay.
So I saw him with all these great things and writings and concepts, and I was like, why don't we just, once in a while you have some ideas, just throw them at me and let's turn it into something. So he is a co-collaborator on a lot of Bedtime for Robots. So I don't even know why I gave him credit on there, more probably because his voice is out there, because I kind of consider him as part of Bedtime for Robots, rather than giving him credit as, featuring.
I see.
He's really part of Bedtime for Robots on some level, because he guests on a lot of stuff.
Okay.
And I kind of always consider him sort of like a silent member. But, he's involved in everything we do. I also think of him as my shaman to some degree, too, because he's very, he's got a lot of philosophical insights. And, kind of when things are bizarre in my life, I tend to go to him a lot.
Yeah.
He's just, he's a good soul. Good man.
That's good. Yeah, it's good to have people like that around. And
Absolutely.
then the song Big Sleep, Little Death, the song, it's because there's the album and then there's the actual song. That guitar on there, did you use the SG on that?
Yes. The SG is all I ever use anymore.
Oh, okay.
It's become like my electric guitar of choice. In fact, I pretty much got rid of most of my other guitars. Ever since I fell in love with this thing that I bought back in 2002. It's pretty much, I bought it as a brand new guitar. It's funny because when I was trying this thing out, they were trying to sell me some vintage SGs, And I'm playing them all. I was like, I'm sorry, but this new one just has the right feel. This thing's got my name on it. I need this guitar.
Yeah.
And so it's become sort of my like my best electric guitar friend. And I just love the way it works. It's great neck on it, beautiful diversity of sounds that I can make out of this thing. I can make it nasty. I can make it pretty. And I would say that probably one of the things that attracted me to the SG in the first place was Tony Iommi of Black Sabbath is one of my favorite bands of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I love about Sabbath also is that they are one of those bands where you can always expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
You know, they have this image of being this dark, heavy band based on riffs, but then they pull out something like Laguna Sunrise or Changes or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, some of the stuff on Sabotage and Never Say Die. And it's like, you know, these guys they were experimenters, you know?
Yeah.
And they were into melody and lyric and everything about what they were doing I thought was really interesting and cool.
Yeah, I always,
So, you know,
there is a darker side to the lyrics, but I think what we consider to be, or I don't know, because I was really young when they were big, but with Black Sabbath, it just seems like besides being dark, there's this element of truth in the lyrics that I think really can be inspirational. But when it goes along, when those lyrics go along with the particular guitar tones and the really hard drums and stuff like that, it gives this effect of being like really, dark and heavy. But if you pull all that back and maybe just kick back and try to learn how to play the one of the songs and just pull out the lyrics and just play with acoustic guitar, it has a completely different vibe to it altogether. So
absolutely, yeah, they're brilliant. And another cool thing lyrically about them is to me their lyrics are very unpretentious, almost like at the street level, almost like like a pre-high school level lyrics, which is kind of cool about it. You know, they're not really super heady like great writers like Morrissey or some of the like the Dylans and this sort of thing. You know, that's all great and all that you can be a poet and blah blah blah, and I admire that. But there's something cool about that street level, that Beastie Boys, that Black Sabbath kind of writing. It's kind of cool to me.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And are you working on any more releases right now? I think I heard you say earlier you're working on something new.
I'm always onto some crazy experiment. The one cool thing about not being associated with a label anymore is that, when you're the label, you're always expected, you have to do this at this time, and, you have to, this is what your focus is right now, and blah, blah, blah. When you're doing this as a free agent, you're not worried about making money, and you're not worried about any of that stuff. You basically do what you feel at the time. So I'm always working on something depending on what I feel, and then certain things get pushed aside for a little while. I focus on one major thing. Like right now, the After Hours thing is kind of the major focus. I'm working on a new Love and Reverse album very slowly and very kind of, not, I wouldn't say secretly, but semi-secretly.
Well, it's not a secret any longer.
I'm working on it. Yeah, he lives in Queens and I live in Tampa, Florida. So we send each other, recordings back and forth and add to them. And it's a really different way of doing Love and Reverse. I'm very excited about the songs on this new record and very psyched about his production approach because it's really different than what we've done before. So that's one of the things. I'm also doing this really stripped down thing. It's like the antithesis of Bedtime for Robots and After Hours. And it's basically, I'm going back to all just songs, from Love and Reverse, the Amazing Me Project, all these other, projects that I've done over the years, even some Bedtime for Robots tracks, and just taking out the acoustic guitar and pulling out those elements, the words, the music, passion, and performing them literally sitting on my porch and filming it, and that's I call it the Florida Porch Sessions, and it's going to be broken into several, like 5 or 6 song, half an hour vignettes.
That's going to be cool.
Like, all right, tonight, here's 6 songs from various eras, my interpretation tonight with a little buzz on, with the rain pouring in the background, whatever the mood is at the moment, or this afternoon on a Sunday, drinking some moonshine and playing some music, that kind of thing. And that's the whole concept of this. It's just stripped down to music in its purest form. Like I said, the antithesis of all this production and getting crazy with all. In fact, the filming of it is just done with an iPad.
Okay.
Where after hours, I'm using a lot of stuff for after hours. There's really nice cameras, and I'm using. I go for some low quality voice sounds on purpose because I'm trying to emulate some of that old 50s TV sounds and stuff.
Okay.
But I'm using software and editing like crazy. I spent a lot of time on like one show just to kind of give it the whole feel and vibe of it, But with this, it's literally just thrown together fast, just bam. You'll even see a little bit of those, you're hanging out in your backyard and playing, and I forgot a lyric there, that kind of thing. It's kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah. I really like the After Hours show, and I can see if you do put a lot of work into it, that it would take, it's not just going to be a weekly show or, a daily show or something like that. So this is a monthly show, and you're actually putting a lot of work into it before it goes live. So that's cool.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, there is a lot of work involved in it. And then not only that, but, all that in between, it's not just putting the show itself together, but, being the house band of the show, creating the videos for Bedtime for Robots that are always fresh and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always working on new videos that are going to be put out there. And also just one of the things that's very difficult when you're working with other artists is there are so many great artists out there making really interesting dark music, but a lot of them don't make videos.
Mm.
So I approached somebody and I'm like, "Ooh, this is fantastic music. Do you have any videos?" "Well, yeah, I'm thinking about making some videos." "I don't have any videos." And, I think a lot of them don't realize, or that you can actually do this nowadays. It's not like you have to hire a big film crew anymore to make a video.
Yeah.
However, it might just not be their thing. They may not be visual artists, and that's cool too. In fact, I had one artist that I'm planning on in the future. She actually, I approached her because I'm just fascinated by her music, and I saw some videos she had. They were okay. They weren't great, but the music was great. And she said, "Yeah, I'm not even collaborating with that person. I didn't do the videos. Someone else did them. If you want to make videos for these, feel free. I'd love to be in your show." So there's that possibility now too, where if someone wants to approach me with their music, as long as they're going to give me some creative license, to visualize their sounds, I'm totally cool with that too.
Hey,
because
I
just want to spread good music around, really.
I have a backlog of a bunch of different videos that I've taken that are just kind of psychedelic, kind of weird effects on them, and just some weird stuff. And I'd be happy to contribute if
I would love
consider
that. If that one thing that I saw is any indication of what you can do, I would love it.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll post some stuff and link you to it, and you can choose it or not choose it or whatever.
In fact, I'd rather you don't post it. I'd rather you send it to me on the inbox so that we can kind of keep it a little bit of a secret.
Okay.
So that when people see it, it's their first time seeing it.
All right, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. In fact, I love that. And I always ask, I have a couple friends that are very, really great at drum programming and have really cool beats and stuff. And not like those cheesy beats people are trying to sell you all the time. Yeah. I'm talking about like really great drummers making really interesting sounds. And I tell them all the time, just send me some of this stuff. I want to turn it into something.
Yeah.
It's really fun as an electronic musician to, instead of, always creating your own things of that, so, your own foundations, to manipulate things that you get from other artists. It's really fun to work that way.
Cool. And
I was really impressed. Like right off the bat, I loved the way that whole with the trees, and the way, not only the look of it, but the way it was dropping vertically instead of horizontally. I was like, "Ooh, that's really cool. I've never seen somebody do this before. That's really interesting."
I can do something like that again.
Yeah, that's really fantastic.
Thanks.
Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
Cool. I will. Where's the best place for people to go and find your music online?
I would say the best few places, actually. There's a few. I kind of focus on these particular sites. I have a bedtimeforrobots.com site, and that's always a work in progress. You can find everything from there pretty much.
Okay.
That's one place. Number two, my YouTube channel is called MF Television, like Michael Ferentino Television, MF Television. And there are not only my own stuff, but I make playlists on there of different things that I'm inspired by, or, that's going to be, and that's another thing I'm going to be elaborating a lot on. But that, you'll definitely get all the after-hour shows from there. You'll be able to get the entire Bedtime for Robots stuff. Slowly putting it one song at a time up there. All my solo acoustic stuff, all the Love and Reverse stuff is up there. All the other projects that I do are up there. So little by little, that's just building and building. And I have a couple really cool playlists of just horror movie soundtrack music and things of that sort up there.
Yeah.
Third, of course, Facebook is always a good one. And I'm pretty open to, if people are respectful, I like to chat with people that are interested in music. And if people want to turn me onto their stuff, and I can help out and send it along to somebody and, repost it and get other people to check out something that's actually, inspired and, something that you can tell is heartfelt. I'm all about that.
Yeah.
And then Django Radio, I really like that a lot. It's sort of like, to me, the cool version of Pandora and those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Django is way more, I think, cutting edge, a lot more into artists of all types, not just, focusing on what's going to sell this month,
Yeah.
And the other thing is they go deeper into the catalogs of artists.
Yep.
So, they have all your big artists are on there, but at the same time, you'll find some really cool underground things on the same station with, say, Marilyn Manson, or the same station with Nine Inch Nails, or Led Zeppelin, or Katy Perry,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the community on Django Radio is a lot friendlier, too.
They are, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, they're very supportive to me. I would say that's one of the areas where I probably pick up a lot of my following is from Django. It used to be Last FM. That was a great one, but they've kind of, I don't know what they're doing. They're in some kind of interim mode. I don't know if they're selling the company or changing the format. But that one was great. And, I made a lot of good radio, internet radio relationships through that. But
Yeah.
it's kind of a defunct world now.
Yeah, I used to really used to really like visiting the groups on Last FM. Those were always really fun, but I saw some stuff on their GitHub because I was learning how to code for a while, and I saw some stuff on their GitHub. They're still actively working on stuff, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's that active, But
Right. Yeah, hopefully they'll make a comeback, because that was a cool little format. I like the way they were set up.
Yeah.
But, it remains to be seen.
Yeah. So
that's pretty much it. I mean, those are my main focuses.
Yeah.
Bandcamp as well. Bandcamp's another one. You can get all the stuff, and I like that you can download it in high quality. And that's where you can buy my stuff. I try to make some of the music at reasonably low prices, and some of it a giveaway. It just depends. on the mood. If I'm in the right mood, I'm like, all right, whatever, it's free this month.
Yeah.
I change that every so often.
Okay.
But yeah, that actually, and Bandcamp is good. I consider it my donation site in a way,
Yeah.
where if people want to come on there and actually buy some of these downloads, it helps to keep everything going. The equipment and websites and all that stuff adds up after a while. I'm not looking to get rich from this. I just do it because I love it. But it's nice to be able to afford to pay your monthly fees and stuff through sales. That helps.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll post all of those links in the show notes. And, but yeah, thank you so much for taking the time and being on my show. I really appreciate it, Michael.
Oh, I really appreciate you having me. This was a lot of fun. It's been really nice talking with you the past couple of times, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to do in the future. I know you're going to do some good things. I have a feeling.
Thanks.